We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw, C70 on Twitter. And after 20 weeks of really good guests, it's been a lot of fun from January 1st till now, talking to lots of different people. But we got him back, folks. It's Alan Medlock sitting over there, and it's A Medlock1 on Twitter and coach at Tulsa Hale. Alan, good to have you back.
Well, I'm glad to be back, but I could hear the phones hanging up as they announced that I was back on here. So sorry that the numbers are going to tank.
I don't think I'm going to be too concerned about that. It's good to get you away from coaching for a little bit. But before we get into talking about the Cardinals and where they're at, let's get that final look at Tulsa Hale. How did things wind up for you and the kids over there?
Well, we're about 3.5 weeks away from our last game of the season, so it's still actually pretty fresh. Did not achieve all of our goals. I was a little bit disappointed in that. It was not to make excuses, just the school year was incredibly rough. If I don't know how much any of our followers, now some of the ones in Oklahoma obviously do, and you probably do just because of the interest in this, but our school year was very, very difficult. The Department of Education over here has kind of ramped up some pressure on the inner city schools, and you had a moving target on your on how your daily work went, it changing constantly. I mean, it was never it never stayed the same, and we're trying to figure some things out. So some of those upperclassmen who have been used to things the way that they have been the past 2 years, those have kind of ramped up and changed a little bit. But we're kind of getting back to a normality now that I think will benefit us next year. I just think that heads were spinning all season, and it was a weird deal. I mean, the first semester was the toughest year I've had here. And I know the kids felt that. On the field, they gave it their all. We let a few wins slip through our hands that would have put us in a really good position, playoff seeding wise. We lost a home game where a rival came back and beat us, and it put us in an extremely tough bracket. We end up doubling our season wins from last year. But we did not win that regional game that we wanted to, that I thought we were in line for. And I think that we kind of blew that opportunity probably the first of March or 1st of April. It kind of hurt us a little bit. And I knew that things were going to be tough from there. I'm going to lose 5 seniors that have meant a lot to the program, but I will return. I'll return 3 juniors moving into their senior year. And I can comfortably say, I think the best 2 players that I will coach in my tenure here, one will be a junior and one will be a sophomore. So the future's bright. We're going to be really green. We start summer league on Tuesday night, and I'm turning a few key positions over to some freshmen. So I think that we're going to keep building up. I'm going to have some pitching next year. And, just speaking of the unsettled nature of Oklahoma athletics and Oklahoma schools, we are going to go in. Most of the time, our districts are based on a 2-year contract. You switch them every 2 years. That's not happening this year. We're going to redo it because we've reclassified some of the private schools that are available that can recruit and do things like that. And if you have postseason success, you move up a class as a private school. It worked perfect. Some of those teams that were some of those guys were, they were just very difficult to play. And then, they get the pick of the litter, basically. Well, there was an injunction put in by TPS, our Oklahoma City private schools, that overturned that, which means that we're going to have to reclassify everybody, and we will be looking at another new district next year. So it's the ground is shaky in Oklahoma schools and athletics right now, but I do see light at the end of the tunnel on this one, and for Hale baseball, I think that we're in a really good spot.
I'm trying to remember, and I could be off, but is this senior class that's coming up the one that's you've had the whole entire time?
These are the ones that I had as
Yeah,
babies this
yeah,
next year, and we've really seen them grow. I have our number one on the mound, and who will ultimately be my number one catcher next year. He was only a junior. So he will be, he's going to some college camps and everything this offseason. And then I have a set of twins who one's my shortstop and one will be the number 2 on the mound and me, my number 2 catcher, honestly. So yeah, we're in a pretty good shape. We're in pretty good shape right now. Summer's going to tell a lot. I mean, in a summer league, like how I look at a summer league for us, it's not about the wins and losses. I just have to get some guys some experience, and get them as many at bats as possible and reps in the field and start catching up on some of that lost ground of game time that they may have missed, and just kind of go from there. But then you have to have those seniors. Those leaders have to lead too, So yeah, that's where we are, and I will say about the first week after the season is an exhaustion that you've never felt before, and I know that sounds silly. But as you get over coaching and caring for everybody, and then you have the school year, it's just really tough, and it seems like the ceiling's caving in on you. But then when you can take that long-term view and realize that you graduated 5 kids, top of their class, 2 of them had a hard time staying eligible when they were younger, to where they walked and will be good kids, that you feel pretty darn good after that.
Absolutely. So, and I think it's fair to mention, I know we had talked about it before the show, and I don't necessarily want to dive too far into it, but you got a promotion as well. I mean, now we don't just say Coach Medlock, we say Athletic Director Medlock, and again, don't have to talk a lot about it, but just want to say congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. So yeah, I have a vision on how I want things to go, and I think I can achieve it now.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. So, all right. Well, let's transition then to what has been a painful subject most of the season, but thankfully a little bit better off now. Talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. Cardinals rained out last night, and maybe before we get into how they've been doing, I didn't get a chance to watch the broadcast, but I was looking forward to watching the replay just because of Joe Buck and Chip Carey to have a chance to hear what that was like. Rain kind of ruined that, but I'm sure that was pretty cool that they were going to do that, and I'd hope that maybe they can pull Joe back for an actual game later on this summer.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It was one of those situations where I was hoping that I know it's the national broadcast today and tomorrow, so I know it was going to be hard to do, and that probably played a big role in why they did it on the Friday night or whatnot. But this weekend's kind of tough too, because it's also the Big 12 tournament. So we were watching both Oklahoma schools last night, so I was flipping back and forth, and I didn't truly get to enjoy the whole thing. I would have liked to watch the lead up and everything and all of that much more than I did. So I hope that there's a time in the summer that they come back and revisit this.
Yeah, I would hope so. I watched a few clips of that were put up on Twitter last night and this morning from it, but And I'm sure with the rain delay, they were able to just sit and talk, which was probably
Oh
pretty
yeah,
nice. But yeah, it would have been very interesting to see them, call the game. And I hope, yeah, like I said, hopefully, hey, maybe they can pull Joe in for that makeup, whatever it is in July. That would be fun.
yeah, it
They
would be awesome.
brought him back in, but I know he also gets going for football pretty early, so it may not be possible. But the Cardinals have been winning some ball games. And you know, I think last week, I don't know if it was when I was talking with Alex or when it was over on Gateway with David. Talking about, that Anaheim series kind of felt like Anaheim gave it to them, so you didn't really necessarily want to put a whole lot of stock into it. But going out and winning 2 out of 3 against Boston and then sweeping a Baltimore team that nobody can say is not good, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
one of the best teams in baseball. Um, that's again, you get, I don't know if cautiously optimistic is the right word. I don't think anybody's, necessarily looking for the playoff tickets just yet, but it does feel like they've finally gotten some momentum.
yeah, you're exactly right. And it's one of those to where you want to be like, man, I'm pretty fired up about this, but then you see, how Anaheim did kind of blow it, and they kind of imploded,
Mhm.
honestly, um, during the series. Gosh, now it seems so long ago that you were able to pull that off, then to come back and win, go on a little run here is pretty nice. You're right. It was one to where you go get home. You have the two um, you have the two teams in the East, and one you never want to overlook, Boston, to go in and win the two out of three in this one. And then you're just thinking, hey, if you can win this series against Baltimore, you look pretty good. And I thought that Baltimore got off lucky because Lynn looked so good in the rain out that I'm
Yeah.
like, now, man, this is going to turn. This is going to um, this is going to turn on its ear, and this could be where a good run ends type
Right,
situation. And
right.
then to come out and Gorman with the bomb right when you come back on the broadcast, and then to win the second one fairly, to close it out on a play with like Newt Bar made. Yeah, I mean, then you kind of start feeling like there's a little bit of juice flowing.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it, but I do wanna be again, I wanna be cautious about it. I mean, one,
Oh yeah,
Cardinals are I'm not and I don't 2023 impacts everything that we talk about now
mhm.
because it is so bad, and we haven't got any good memories to go away from that yet because this is just the next season. But you look at it, and it was about this time last year that the Cardinals put together a little bit of a run, right? That made it a little bit interesting. We start talking about, okay, they're turning the corner. Everything's great. This division's winnable. They just dug them a bit of a hole, all the stuff that we're kinda saying now too. And then they went out and lost 11 of 13 to start June.
Yeah.
And I don't know that this team has that, but there is that concern that while the offense is coming around, that the pitching staff isn't gonna be able to hold up, especially since the Cardinals still haven't really kind of figured out what they wanna do with the 5th starter spot.
Yeah, that would be the sore spot at this point. And yeah, here's my. I'm honestly, it's one of those. What options do they have? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
one, I
true.
thought the Liberatore deal was let's leave him alone and figure it out from there.
Mhm.
And they didn't give him and stock, and his stock is plummeting in that aspect now. Wouldn't you think?
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, this
yeah.
is the fourth time they tried it, and the fourth time that has not been successful. Um, so I don't know. Where are we at with Thompson? Are any of the young guys ready? Has he done enough to maybe earn a look? I mean, I don't know. And a lot of times they're delayed on those, but are they in a situation this year to where they can make those delayed moves? I mean, I don't know. I mean, patience right now looks like it's paying off, but you're right. I mean, it cratered in the summer last year. So I'm actually not really sure what direction they can go with it. I don't I really don't know. You feel like you're gonna get quality starts out of the other four at this point, and you just don't want this to be a revolving door to where you're wearing out your bullpen on your fifth day to where it's not effective, and then you have two aspects of the season going down the drain.
Well, yeah, that is a big issue. The bullpen's been pretty impressive, and
Mhm.
there are a couple of spots in there that are a little bit softer than others, but even them, they've been, like you don't necessarily expect John King to be, a guy that you're talking about, but he's had at least some good outings. Again, he's not your first choice to get out there, but they brought him in I think it was the rain out against Baltimore, the not the delayed one overall, but the one where we had 2 hours of rain delay or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. But been a wet week in St. Louis for sure. But and they brought him to start that game because they had a lot of lefties in the game at the time, and he was very effective. Those kind of things. If you can slot him in the right spots, some of those guys, it doesn't matter where you bring him in. The Helsleys and the Kittredge and all that stuff. They're going Romero. They're going to be good no matter. But some of those guys
Yeah.
are being very effective when they can be put in the right situations, and so far they're doing that. I mean, I don't know if we've seen Lotos or not yet. I can't remember. But um, we got people like you got Middleton that's on a rehab assignment that may be up pretty soon. Gallegos is rehabbing as well, and there's always concern with Gallegos, but still, I mean, that's another. You're getting reinforcements there, which is good. But you're right. If you're going to start wearing them down with that spot, and I know you said everybody else is a quality player, you trust them, but Lance Lynn's just, except for this one against Baltimore, which was good to see, he's just not getting past the fifth very often, and especially for what we expected Lynn to be, right? I mean, he was going to be a guy that went 6 or 7, kind of like what Kyle Gibson is doing now, right? It may not be super, but it's solid and it keeps you in a game, and he's out there for 6 or 7 innings. Haven't
Sure.
really seen that for Lynn as much, and maybe it'll come around. But if it doesn't, when you're taking, one day you've got to cover 3 to 4 innings with your bullpen, and one day you got to cover 4 to 5 innings. You're right; those guys are going to get worn down pretty quick.
Yeah, it's at that revolving door a little bit as well. So, yeah, it's to me, I feel like they've given what somewhat was expected.
Mm,
I would think Lynn probably improves just because his strikeout rate is still fairly high. But that also comes with you're going to throw more pitches and you're going to run into issues. I mean, he's just a challenge guy, and that will be a problem. I still with him, it's one of those where I've always loved him and kind of hated to see him go in the first place, just because it's one of those that he's going to step up in a big spot too. And he's going to throw up a good start for you, and there's just a lot of confidence. And at this point, I mean, the undefeated one, Father Time, may be playing a factor. You don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but he's still probably my favorite guy to see take the take the mound though. Just I mean, is not far off from your average dude out there, striking guys out, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt that it's been nice to have Lance Lynn back. It's just been a little bit less than we thought on the
Yeah,
field. But there have been times, and again, you go back to the beginning of the year, he had struggles because of weather and things of that nature. We used to call Michael Walker the human rain delay because he always
yeah,
seemed to get rained on. And Lance Lynn's taken that role a little bit this year, but yeah, you know, it's you can see why the early starts you could kind of ride off a little bit, but it just has continued a little bit longer than I expected. But hopefully it will, because I think you're right. I mean, with this offense starting to turn around, if they can get league average pitching on 4 days, because you're going to get better than that with Sonny Gray, they can make up. They're 5.5 games behind the Brewers right now. Just 3 back of the Cubs. If they could have swept the series, which they can't now because or at least they can't win 3 games. They could have been tied for second. But it would have been you're right there, right? You're still there competitive, especially since you haven't seen much of the Central yet.
yeah,
I've complained about this, I think, on every show that I've been on lately. But this balanced schedule business is for the birds when you don't play the Cubs till May. You've played the Brewers twice, and you still haven't seen the Reds or the Pirates yet.
yeah. It's you're right. It's odd. I mean, there's so many things in the schedule now that, the Friday off days, the weekend off days,
Mhm.
I mean, I get it and I understand the growth of things, but it is somewhat frustrating because we can say this all the time and how frustrating these things can be of how much baseball shoots itself in the foot.
Sure.
With the scheduling in general. You're right. I mean, you would think I'm not even going to look it up. How many times have Boston and New York played? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
more than once at this point. And I mean, we're at Memorial Day weekend, so it's tough to justify to have the rivalries as far out as possible.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm gonna see if I can pull that up real quick because that is interesting to think about. Because they may not. I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
problem is, and actually, I do. If I just a quick look, it doesn't look like they've played yet
Wow.
this year. And again, that's just kind of again
Yeah.
the Yankees have played Milwaukee, but they haven't played Boston. Um, and and that's a little bit of the case as well. They've played a couple of their teams. They've played. Um, Toronto. It looks like they've already played Toronto twice, and they've played Baltimore and Tampa Bay, but that's it for them on their division too. And again, I'm sure that's a lot of people are dealing with that. And yeah, right. I mean, to some degree, the idea of bringing everybody into town is a nice idea, but I'd
Yeah.
rather see that rival those. I mean, I know people got tired of watching the Pirates 19 times. But
Yeah.
by the end of the 19 times, you knew the Pirates, right? You
Yeah.
knew the teams you knew the teams in that division. You had those rivalries. You knew who was good and who wasn't on those teams. And now, I mean, it's just 6 fewer games times, 4 other teams. It becomes significant, I think. It doesn't feel like that, tight division anymore. Maybe it makes divisional games more important because there's fewer of them, but I don't know. I just the fact that the Cardinals don't play the Cubs till into June or into May, and they're done with them before September, I think, or the very beginning of September. I don't think it's before September. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end,
What will I become? Senwa Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
But I'm an old man.
Completely agree. I was always kind of a fan of the unbalanced anyway, for that the reasons that you just said, just because, 19's a lot, but 19's fun and you stay in the division more. So, I mean, I get it. I get the growing the game and having you playing every team and then switching it out, year after year. I get it, but it is odd that it feels like. It almost feels like spring training runs through April, type situation. I don't know.
Well, and it would be interesting. I'm trying to just kind of think of this as it goes. But when we get to expansion, and we know that expansion's coming in the next decade, probably anyway, right? If you went to 4 divisions in, so you'd have just either one, so eight 4-team divisions basically. It would be interesting to see how the numbers would work. If you could play a little bit more against, the 3 teams, if you could play 15, 16 games against 3 teams and then see if you could still play everybody else. Just reducing the division by 1, if that would allow you to play more interdivisional games while still keeping this idea of everybody playing each other. I don't know. I haven't done any of the number. I'm just now thinking about that, but that might be one of the saving graces there is that if they go to a smaller division, of course, the problem with that is they're going to take like the winner and the second place team. It's going to be, completely ridiculous in the playoffs. But, I think that would at least give you a chance to get back to some of that of playing somebody in your division more times and really getting a little bit of an impact on that.
Yeah. That feels like where we're coming in. You and I talked about that several years ago. Whenever playoffs expanded, it was one of those. You could kind of see that it's going to be expansion before too long.
Yeah. What I think Commissioner said he wanted to get Oakland situated and Tampa Bay situated before they talked about it, and for better or for worse, those situations seem to be coming to a head, right? I think that
Yeah,
Tampa Bay has a stadium proposal. I don't remember exactly how far it is, and then Oakland is Oakland, and that's a situation that everybody doesn't like, but baseball's going to allow.
yeah.
So and commissioners, going to be done. What was it, 29? I think so. You got to feel like he wants to at least get this process started while he's still here.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds like that's the going away party.
Yeah, good possibility. So, I mean, like I said, we haven't talked about the team much over the last 20 weeks. But what have you been seeing? What has really stood out to you when you've been keeping up with the Cardinals?
Yeah. What the troublesome part is the one that everybody's had issues with the if your stars aren't going to hit, you're not going to be any good regardless. You know what I
Right.
mean? I mean, those are kind of your tent poles. That's what you kind of that's what you based your offense on. And it was I was thinking, well, this is going to be a situation where it's going to be another long summer in case some of the young guys start hitting. Now I feel like Burles has started, his luck started to change that we were hoping to see last year. And then you get into a situation to where Winn now looks like, not necessarily just offensively, but he looks like he could be the face before too long.
Yeah.
Those are the optimistic points of view. The younger guys that are starting to play well make me feel a lot better about things because it was one of the situations where you're like, well, this is just naturally the downturn of how things work because age is starting to win, and your young guys are still struggling to compete. And I thought, well, this will maybe their version of a rebuild. I don't necessarily feel that way now. I mean, I know it's just because it's been a pretty good run, but honestly, it's been pretty good, clean baseball too. And it goes back to pitching and defense, which has been, their trademark for years. And those things are really good right now, which make me think, okay, now you can kind of see that you're going to be in this a little bit. And they've kind of fought their way back now. And Cincinnati's kind of helped on this by kind of falling apart. But you've worked into a situation now to where you just win series and you're going to make up ground. A month ago, it was starting to look like you're going to have to sweep series to get yourself back into this situation. And that's tough to say in May, but we saw what happened last year about how things, you lose a series here or there, and then it turns into you lose every series, then it turns into you lose every night, to where I felt like you needed to make up some ground. And now I feel like it's kind of starting getting back to the historically good Cardinals teams, based on athleticism and defense, and you build from there. And where last year, the offense, we were like, well, the offensive numbers are good. They're just not good anywhere else. Now I feel like that's all coming to kind of that midline to where you can see that they're going to probably compete most of the summer as long as the pitching holds up to where it is right now. And I feel like you're going to be able to make up some ground. And if the young guys keep improving, then you could be a really good team ultimately. So you got some guys coming back. I don't know where your Edmund fits in yet. You don't know when, wrist injuries always worry you about a player, in particular a catcher with Contreras, but potentially he could be back sometime in late July. Right now optimism's high on my end. Let's put it that way.
I think it's only fair to say that, you're right. I don't disagree with you too much on the defense side of things, but they have a 9-game streak with an error in it. So, it can get better, but some of, so far, a lot of those errors haven't really cost them
Sure.
either, right? I mean, because they've made, there were games against the Baltimore, you just felt like they were going to blow up, and they could have, and sometimes did. I mean, sometimes they did get burned by it, but they were able to overcome that, which was nice to see, and I don't think necessarily would have happened last year. So yeah, I think you're right, and I think I mean, you're very much right on Masyn Winn. I've talked about it here in different places, but that's the guy that I feel like I have the most confidence in, right? That I'm most excited about out of this young group of people. I mean, Gorman is going to have he's going to have things, and Walker has a good chance at some point in time to be, a better player overall.
Agreed.
But or maybe not overall, depending on how you look at things. Um, but Wynn's the one I just have the most confidence. Maybe because I'm, an Ozzie Smith guy that grew up loving shortstops, but the fact that he can field the way he does and has figured out how to hit at the major league level, um, which is what we thought he would do, right? We thought the feet in the water last year was going to be give him that good foundation to be able to adjust to it this year. So far, it has. I mean, he's not going to hit 30 home runs or anything, but he's also hit, more home runs this week than he had all year, right? He's had a good homestand, and so it's been fun to see him kinda continue to develop into the situation where people are not just in St. Louis, but other places are talking about him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and it's one of those. It, even with he had the back-to-back errors, which one it kicked off his glove, but that was an outfield play,
Mhm.
against Baltimore, I believe it was. But the thing is man, he can cover the whole left side of the infield
Yeah.
and has really stabilized it. And that's one of those situations where you'll probably have to eat some errors, still young a little bit, but I mean, he changes the whole trajectory of how it works. You know what I mean? And that started a little bit with Arenado, who well, yeah, I think the left side is. I feel like Wynn is picking up the step that Arenado may have lost. Let's put it that way. And it's just a stabilizing factor to have to be good up the middle defensively to where they are. And man, he's just impressive to watch.
I mean, you say that Arenado might have lost a step, and he may have. I don't do but it's also possible that we don't know because Wynn's taking that step. You know what I'm saying? That he's getting to balls that Arenado probably could get to, but he's got a little bit more range to be able to. I don't know. I mean, not being able to watch it on a regular basis,
Yeah,
but there's that idea, right? That sometimes it looks like somebody's taking a step back just because that other person's taking the step forward.
sure, that's a good point.
Yeah. And I agree. I love the fact that those two are, kind of I don't they kinda competing with each other a little bit, right? In a good way, 'cause who can make the most defensive plays? Who can do this? And I mean, it's only helping him learn Masyn Winn learn about, defense and stuff. And I know we've got Brandon Crawford on this team, and apparently that's the only reason we have Brandon Crawford on this team, but, and then you start wondering, I mean, when does how much longer and it's not a huge issue right now, but it's still a little bit frustrating anytime that you go to a game and Crawford starting over Win, right? I
Sure,
mean, this last Sunday, the Roku game, because it wasn't blacked out in any place, I was able to watch it, and that was a game that Crawford started, of course. So it's a little bit frustrating. I feel like Jose Fermin did a really fine job, and he would be a perfectly good backup shortstop. It's interesting that the Cardinals are still lingering on Crawford. I mean, I'm sure he's doing well, the clubhouse vibes and all that kind of stuff,
sure.
but it's still feels like, you know, is this necessarily the best thing for this team?
Exactly. Like there's it's filling up a roster spot that doesn't necessarily have. I agree with you
Right,
on
right.
that. I mean, it feels like to where yeah, I'm not real sure. I mean, it's tough for me to say but it is disappointing when he plays at this point, and I can't I hate saying that because I actually like Crawford, but it just doesn't. It seems like you can get that production from somewhere else, or a guy like a Fermin that can play a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah.
Would make a little bit more sense to me. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one. It was kind of an odd fit anyway, and I think it was kind of that safety net fit to if he were to regress a little bit, where you could have at least a defensive back, a defensive shortstop back there. But I mean, he right now he can't hit, and I mean that's one of the reasons he's not back in San
Right.
Francisco right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there are times. I'm not saying this is what John Mozeliak did or front office did, because I do think they had their reasons, especially
Sure.
the idea of backing up Win. But there are times I would think, as a front office type, that you spend a lot of years looking at a guy and really wishing he was on your team. And, when you get that opportunity to get him, then you get him, just because,
Yeah.
hey, we finally, it may not be, he's obviously not the guy that he used to be, and all that kind of stuff. But, it's, hey, it's fun, to some degree. I don't know if that, that plays a role of, hey, we know this guy, and hey, at least we can say he was a Cardinal at some point in time.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah. Good
mm,
point.
I mean, you wouldn't think so, because that's a little bit more of emotional um, reaction than you would probably want or definitely expect from this front office. So I don't think that's part of it. It can bias, I would think, your look at a player. It's like, give them the benefit of the doubt because you have watched him for 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, and kind of hope that, at some point in time he could be on your side because you really like the way he plays. And sometimes that works out well. I mean, it worked out in the, bringing Albert Pujols back to some degree, and a little bit different situation, obviously, but sometimes it doesn't. And I don't feel like Crawford's going to be here all year long, but you know, he might well be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine on that, honestly, because I feel the same way. Um, as you get into June and you kind of start figuring out who you are a little bit, it's it's weird.
Yeah. Jordan Walker, been in Memphis, is hitting a little bit better, but unless I've missed it in the last day or so, still didn't have a home run.
Yeah.
Not only, doesn't have a home run in majors, doesn't have, I mean, here we are getting close to June and he has no home runs. Is that a concern at
A little
all
bit.
for you? Okay.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, my issue turns into the paralysis by analysis aspect of it.
Mhm.
Whenever you start with the big league roster last year, go down quickly, battle your way back, have a good second half last year, come back, start slow, go back down. You're just like, he needs to play pretty free, and I'm not so certain that's what he's being allowed to do right now. The I, I'm not so I don't know. It concerns me more how much he can be the forgotten guy at this point.
Mhm.
Whenever all things led to him being a member of the big three of an offense. So I hope that things are figured out quickly, because this is starting to feel like an Alex Reyes type situation.
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting person. I mean, you're right. The thing with Reyes is there was injuries, and thankfully
Sure,
we haven't had
sure.
that issue with Walker. But the Cardinals have had a number of top prospects that just never kind of panned out. Right, Steven Piscotty, came to the major leagues and had a really great year, and then just kind of for the rest
Yeah,
of his career. And then again, not saying that a Walker's like that. I think, we tend to also, forget, a lot of people do, that, Walker turned 22 this week.
yeah,
So,
agreed.
there is that prospect fatigue that gets out there, that you've heard about this guy, and you want to see him perform. And we've seen him perform at the major league level, but it's just, I mean, he's hitting 289. He's got 6 doubles in his 83 at bats at Memphis, and in triple as well. So I feel like he's starting to, we'll see how that goes. It's still a fairly small sample size down in Memphis, but he's going to have to, it feels like, really start crushing it down there before he gets that call up, right?
Yeah,
And that might be, boy, that might be the All-Star break before
agreed.
they feel like they have enough of a base to say, okay, you're coming up, unless there's an injury at the major league level, of course. But that would definitely not be the way we expected the season to go.
No, completely agreed. It's yeah, it's I think they are going to be patient on him. I think it's going to be one of those to where um I don't think he's an injury away. Let's put it that way. I think that he's
Okay.
going to have to hit his way to get back in the lineup, and that's probably the patience they had should have shown in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
and you know I and you're probably right. It may be the break unless he just goes on a big bender. I don't know.
Yeah. I know it's going to be interesting to watch how he develops, what they do with him. You know, there's got to be a little bit of change, a little bit of concern up in the front office, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
this idea that we're kind of on that cusp of a change up there. It feels like no matter what,
agreed.
Mo's done with his contract, and then the next year at best case scenario, and it could be that they shift him into different responsibilities even earlier than that. So how that kind of dynamics up there impacts how they treat Jordan Walker and others is something to be it's something we don't really know anyway, but maybe we can guess that. But yeah, I think that and that's what we were talking about with Masyn Winn. If they had let him get 6, 8, 12 weeks of AAA ball last year and really get a firm foundation before he got called up to the majors, maybe things are different than they are
Yeah,
than sending him back down twice.
yeah, and it makes you wonder if you're right. I mean, if it was one of those to where would the Cardinals have been in a better situation if they let well, they didn't realize they were going to crater like they did, but it's a
Sure.
situation where would you have rather seen him dominate AAA last year and answer the questions of why he's not up than be battling what you're dealing with right now. Now, also that goes into everybody develops different, and you're right. I mean, youth is still there, so probably a lot of questions that don't have answers at this point, and it's one of those. Let's not rush him to where we
Yep.
at one point felt like we had to.
Yeah, Kyle was on talking about birds this week, and I haven't listened to the whole show, but the parts that I have, they were talking about the development in the minor leagues and how things have probably been rushed at times. It's usually on the pitching side, but I think Jordan Walker is the same way. I mean, if Jordan Walker doesn't have those first 2 weeks or 3 weeks of spring training last year where he was, just lighting it up, I think I would like to think the front office probably doesn't do that. I think they got a little anxious about wanting to see him, and I think they felt the pressure a little bit of people saying, "Hey, this guy's ready." But you and I talked about it. Well, maybe we didn't because it was that time of year where we were talking about guests. We guessed in, but I
Yeah,
think we probably talked about it anyway. The fact that at the end of spring training last year, that the last week or two he didn't hit that much, right? And
yeah,
and to take, and we always do this. We always look at spring training stats and extrapolate from them stuff we shouldn't. And that I think was the case. And I don't again, he came up last year after the demotion to AAA and hit well. So I don't think there was any reason to expect that he would struggle this year the way he has. But you do wonder that if they had just said, "Yeah, great, Jordan Walker did well. We're glad for him, and we want him to go to Memphis and get that experience and really knock down the door to come up here."
yeah.
If they had done that, would things be different? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough at this point. It's because I mean, you become you become the forgotten man, and that's
Right.
where I mean, one that could be a good thing. I mean, because if the offense was bad right now, they're like, hey, what the heck happened? Where are
Mhm.
these guys right now? But it's a situation where guys are hitting and development's happening, and you can see it, and you kind of think, well, okay, now ultimately this is what's going to work out. Can well, Contreras is a clear spot, but does Walker have a clear spot at this point? I mean, I don't know. I mean, on the flip side of that, you kind of worry about Carlson. Where is he going to fit in the long term? Because his stock's another one that's dropping.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Brent talking about Carlson as well, and I don't know. I don't. it's really, really hard to imagine how Carlson can do anything on this team. And to be fair, I mean, it's hard to know. He's coming out of a good spring. If he starts off without being injured, is he better off? He's struggled significantly. He's 3 for 29, this season, with no extra base hits. And granted, he's kind of been shunted into that, backup role and stuff, and they've not given him the run because Michael Ciani has done
Sure.
so well, especially defensively and held his own offensively. But it's hard to imagine Carlson getting a chance to run with it, but it's also kind of hard to imagine him kind of taking advantage of it, right? I mean, we just haven't seen him be good for an extended period of time in a long time.
No, yeah. And I was really hoping that just the fact that there was questions whether he would be back this year and all those things were a motivating factor. And honestly, there may be a pressure factor on him at this point because he's had the weight of high expectations, throughout his whole career. Another red flag for Walker potentially, of what we think these guys are going to be. Truth serum, the Cardinals, I think that they probably thought that the combination of Carlson and Ciani would be, especially after spring training, that would probably be the combo that would probably work out the best. And that way Scott would be down, because Scott and Ciani to me were redundant from the beginning.
Sure.
And it was tough because you're thinking, well, that's basically the same player at this point. And, one that's reached the big leagues and one that hasn't. And, as exciting as Scott was, and I hope he comes back quickly. I mean, you probably have that as your starting center fielder right now, and with maybe a little bit better production. And you thought that, well, the offensive side of that was probably going to come from Carlson, and it's, what kind of luck? Last game of the spring training, you get hurt. Now you feel like you can't unhitch that wagon, and Burleson's becoming what we thought he was going to be. New bar. You're going to have a hard time finding at bats. I was proud that he singled the other day to lead off a rally, and I was like, okay, that's the first hit I've seen him have all year. But there's just not. I don't know. What an enigma as a player. It's really strange with Carlson, because I expected so much more. But I mean, I remember having a lot of off the broadcast conversations with you and Kyle about, hey, I think this dude can play some center field, because it started as, hey, he's just an he's just an athlete out there, and it may not work. He's going to play in right field, to where toward the end of that season in Double-A, I was thinking, man, this could be a guy that can do some things. To where now it's just, there's that unfortunate level of disappointment with it.
Yeah. And once you get that little air of disappointment or a failure around you, it can be hard to shake that. Not only in your own mind, but in the way people get used. I mean, it's really hard to imagine that, barring injury, Dylan Carlson gets any kind of extended run, right? I mean, it's just not going to happen. At least not here. And maybe there's some place out there that can unlock what he's got. I mean, it's just, baseball's littered with guys that had a good rookie year and didn't do much afterwards. So it's not saying that it's happened, but he obviously had the talent to have a good run, and it just hasn't clicked for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point, as much as people start pointing fingers about Arozarena and Garcia and people like that. It's almost to the point where you want him to go somewhere and unlock it, right? Because it doesn't feel like it's going to happen here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's one of those in the back of my mind. I mean, I've never truly bought into a lot of that. I will say less and less am I a believer, or more and more I'm a believer that, hey, we may hold some of these guys back a little bit. We being the Cardinals, I'm sorry, but because you see guys that literally go out and become stars and produce.
Yeah.
I'm not as bought into the trade to Boston yet being a complete stinker. You know what I mean? But I will say the line of guys, particularly outfielders, that are leaving and becoming becoming productive big league players. That list has grown to be pretty long. And you do kind of wonder if that may be the pressure of the whole situation that affects some of these guys. And you would think that you're exactly right. Carlson seems to be a good dude that could probably afford that welcome that change of scenery potentially.
See, I don't rank the Tyler O'Neill trade in that same group with
Yeah, no,
Garcia and Arozarena because he had done it here, and we knew as fans, we knew that if he got traded and if he was healthy, he would be good. It was just the fact that the Cardinals couldn't wait on him to be healthy anymore here.
yeah,
If he was if he had come into this season healthy, I'm not saying he'd have 11 or 12 home runs like he has now, but he'd probably have 6 or 7 or 8 and be leading the team and we'd feel a lot better about things, right? But
yeah,
you just didn't know. And there was, I mean, and again, we speculate about behind the scenes issues, and we wonder if, although Ollie and Tyler O'Neill seem to have a decent relationship in public now, when they've come across each other, we always thought that maybe there was something behind the scenes, and we don't know, we're not there, but it did feel like that maybe that was an addition by subtraction just because of the clubhouse issues. So I'm not surprised. I think nobody was surprised that Tyler O'Neill, when you take it away from the context of those other trades, that Tyler O'Neill had a good start in Boston. Now he has also had he struggled in May a little bit more too, and that's the other part of it, right? He was ridiculously streaky. So you knew what you were you knew that
sure,
risk. I do think the Cardinals, so low on him. I know Robertson has pitched for him, and I don't know about if Santos will at some point in time, but it feels like a guy that could hit the way he does. They sold low on him, but they couldn't do anything else right then because he'd been hurt.
yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's and it was one of those. I mean, you and I had a lot of conversations about this. Um, yeah, he's the odd man out. Even with that
Yeah,
potential,
right.
we kind of thought that he may even get traded at the deadline last year.
Hmm.
So obviously it had soured at some point, and selfishly it was with me too. I was like, I'm kind of tired of this. You know what I mean? Of
Sure,
dealing
sure,
with
sure.
this. So,
But
but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, so I agree, and that's kind of why I say that tongue in cheek, to where I'm like, well, I'm not completely convinced that this was a loss that some people think it
mhm.
was, because the people of Boston could eat this up when that first injury happens. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the long and short of it, there is that worries me a little bit about Walker. That makes me think that, well, Carlson because he was another name that was brought up that may not be here. If you
Mhm.
remember, and you know it's I don't know. It just seems like in the 10 years we've done this, or however long it is at this point, it's always the outfield revolving door that we've talked about.
Yeah, yeah. The Cardinals spent so much time and energy, it felt like, to get to that. Harrison Bader, Tyler O'Neill, and man, I'm not even sure the third. Maybe it wasn't Newbar, but there was a third who I'm probably missing because I want to say maybe it's Carlson, O'Neill, and Harrison Bader. I think they wanted that's the outfield they wanted, right? They were trying to get to that outfield. And it lasted, like, I think they played together, what, like 30 games or something like that, and then,
Yeah,
Bader gets shipped off, and now Tyler O'Neill's been shipped off, and Carlson's whatever Carlson is, it just the plans never come to fruition the way that you think, but it is surprising that they've rotated the way they have, um, and, I don't know. I mean, you really get into that whole idea of what's going on in the front office now, and has the game passed them by, and all that kind of stuff. And I think those are legitimate questions. I don't know if anybody's going to ask them in a couple of weeks at Blogger Day, but but maybe we will.
yeah,
But I also don't, I mean, what are you gonna say if
sure,
you ask Mo if the game's passed him by, he's gonna say no. I think we still have a good feel on it. You don't know when the game has passed you by because if you did, you get out of it, right? I
yeah,
mean, when if you're still there, you feel like you are, maybe you've had some bad luck, but you still know what you're doing, and you know that's why I think sometimes it doesn't do you any good to ask those questions because they they don't think that way, even if it has.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's one of those where I've always been a firm believer in this front office. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
track record I felt is there. But there are enough hiccups along the way, and to know that, the years they've spent doing this has been an eternity in baseball years, where you wonder if group thought has kind of set in a negative,
Right.
and I
Right.
understand why they brought in Bloom and asked a lot of questions. And at this point, Bloom's guys that he's brought in pitching wise have been effective. So you do wonder if, and I think I think you hit it earlier. I think you're spot on. I think the churn's coming regardless. Whether they make the miracle run or not. I do think there's going to be a lot of things that happen in the next 24 months that point to you being probably more correct than you think.
Yeah, I think the most fascinating thing will be if Chaim Bloom gets that president of baseball operations job, basically.
Yeah.
If he gets it over um, Flores or Gersh, because I think if he does, being that he is, I mean, for the most part, a complete outsider, right? He's an advisor right now. He's not even. I mean, last I knew, he's not living in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I'm sure he travels in here and there, but he's not. You wouldn't say he's a full time guy, necessarily. And if he gets it, I think there's a good chance that he brings a lot of outside voices into
Yeah.
this. If they go with a Flores or if they go with a Gersh, I mean, they are very capable people, don't get me wrong, but it feels like that's just a continuation of what we've got, right? I mean, they're going to probably bring in, that's when you're still looking at people that have had a connection at the Cardinals getting bumped up or brought in, but it's not necessarily the fresh voices that you really want to see. Where as Chaim Bloom can bring in a lot of different guys that have no connection to St. Louis, and maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I mean, you never know, but it would be different for sure, and it give you a chance to do something different. But I'm still not 100. I know a lot of people think that Bloom's the front runner for that job, and maybe he is, but I'm just not sold that
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that he wants it.
Sure.
And that's the way that the Cardinals will go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. I mean, that would be the path of least resistance move that the DeWitts would do. You know
Sure.
what I mean? To where it didn't stray that far from it. But yeah, no, you're right. I felt like that. I was like, they're not hiring the successor at this point. I don't know. I mean, I would assume that whoever it is, I mean, if it is Bloom or whoever else, I would assume there's some Tampa Bay involvement, in some part of that.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm not so certain, but I do feel like the changing of the guard is in effect right now. Whether they have a successor in plan, I don't know, but I do feel like it's coming.
Was do you think the last time the Cardinals interviewed outside people for a job, and I mean like a significant job, uh, was after Tony La Russa left? Because they didn't interview anybody after they fired Matheny. They just brought in Schilt.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't interview anybody after Schilt, I don't think. They just brought in Marmol. They haven't had to interview anybody. I don't know. I don't know if they interviewed anybody when Joggety left. They just gave it. I mean, they had the discussions about where it was going to go, and I guess they did because Chris Antonetti was on that
I was
list. I
going to say,
remember
weren't they?
now. Yeah.
Now, reportedly, those were the two finalists, right?
Right.
Antonetti and Mo. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Antonetti's can kind of confirm that at times, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, but even that's before Matheny. So I mean,
Oh,
it
yeah.
very
I
well
see what you're
may.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know I was just trying to decide, but it very well may be that it's been 10 plus years since they've even talked to people outside of things. I mean, they hired Chaim Bloom just as an advisor, just because he's Chaim Bloom. They didn't have a job and they started talking to people, and that's who they went with. That was just, hey, let's get him in here and get a new voice, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something, but they haven't even looked at going a different direction. So even if they interview other people, I'd really be, I guess what I'm trying to say, a long, long way around it, is it would be very interesting that when Mo's spot comes up, if they have an open interview process. I mean, they talked to Bloom, they talked to Garcia, or Gersh, and they talked to Flores, but do they talk to uh, somebody that's now in Tampa Bay? Do they talk to somebody that's now in Houston? Do they talk to somebody that's here or there, or some up and coming guy in this time? Do they really expand the net, or do they stick with the people they know?
Yeah. That's honestly, that's, I don't feel it would be as widespread as we expected it, as
Probably
we
not.
would
No.
want it to be. Let's put it that way.
No. And that's sad because the Cardinals' job is a job that I think anybody that in baseball would probably want to go after, right? I mean, a, a few other. I mean, if you've got the Yankees job, you're not coming to the Cardinals. But anybody that's trying to make an upward move, the Cardinals' job is a very attractive one, and they would have kind of their pick of people to some degree. But I don't know that they're going to avail themselves of that. Now, again, we're talking whenever Mo's done, and that could be sometime into next year. Lots of things can change between then and now. But if Mo gets a bump up or a side move or whatever, if it gets him out of Pobo before that, it really feels like they're just going to go internal, right? They're not going to, they might say Heimblum's going to take over for the next year or something till the end of Mo's contract or something, But the only time they're going to do a widespread thing is if Mo lets it go for a while or at
Yeah.
the end of his contract.
Yeah. It's, you do. I don't know. Like, I felt going into the season that change was coming. It not even in such a negative way. Now, I do feel like Mo has gotten to the point now to where he would fall on the sword of things were terrible.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's even beneficial at this point because we see we see the end of the road already. So yeah, I'm not so certain, but that is a great question to see how wide they would cast this net, or if it would be someone in house who was in that point. You're right, a Bloom who's brought in for Mo's job and been like, hey, you have Tampa Bay connections. That's probably something we would look at, and maybe Baltimore. One of those type deals, and maybe you can start picking apart some of those guys right now is what I would think would happen.
Yeah, because the Cardinals lost a lot of great talent when Lano left.
Yeah.
It's been years now, but there's a lot of that talent that never really got fully replaced, I think. And so it would be interesting not only to see who they would hire as a new guy in charge, but how that guy in charge would then start looking at restocking the front office or what kind of changes would be made there. And we talk about change. Change has come to the field. Today, the Cardinals are using the City Connect jerseys for
Oh
the
yeah.
first time. Released, kind of leaked out last Friday and when Alex and I were recording. So we talked a little bit about it, but full reveal this week. And Alan, what are your thoughts?
I liked them. I heard it's funny when you hear. I get to ask the high school kids and some of the even younger coaches
Yeah.
about what I was like. I was fired up when I saw them, and mainly because it didn't change a whole lot. It was on par with the conservative view they have on their uniforms, and I like that. And I was pretty excited about it. Everybody, the kids and the my assistant, they hated him because
Really?
they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, City Connect supposed to go a little far. Go out of the box a little bit, and stretch it out. That's normally just like the stuff they wear." And then being old man yelling at the clouds, I had to tell them, "Hey, they don't ever go different color pants and jerseys. They don't do that at
Right.
all. They don't let go of the birds on the bat." I said, "This is about as wide ranging as you're going to get out of them," and I appreciated it.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest drawback for people. I haven't found anybody that doesn't like them in general. I mean, like a uniform, but I think the people that don't like them is the fact that that it didn't go, that it is more like almost exactly what they're wearing now. I understand that. I think it would have. I do like them, and I don't. And I've talked about this last week. I like them, and I'm glad, like you, that they didn't get too crazy. It would be interesting to see some of the other alternatives that they gave Bill DeWitt the third. Because he talked about there's some without the birds on the bat, and I think yes, the birds on the bat is iconic, obviously, but for a City Connect, that's not necessarily supposed to be, your new uniform. I think you could get away without that, right? I think that, I'm glad that I'm glad that's on there, but I don't think you have to have that on something that's basically an informal jersey.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're right. I hadn't even thought about the other, some whatever workups they would have of other jerseys to see what they would have seen. Because, like, to me, I think Philadelphia is too far out there. But I
Yeah,
get it
yeah,
because we're
yeah.
also talking about the Phillies, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So obviously it's an eye catcher. I would like to have seen some of the options they did throw to them. It always comes back to this to me, though. If you remember, probably year one or two of us doing this, I had written a blog post about the baby blue uniforms and how I was a fan of just bringing the top jersey back for whatever reason, just because it reminded me of the 80s and I liked it. And in digging through a lot of information you got with that, you found out that Bill DeWitt Sr. is not a big fan of the alternating, or not alternating, but off the color jersey, white pant, because it looks like beer league softball was the line.
Yeah.
And some of the other uniform options about how they're never going to lose the birds on the bat, iconic, and things like that. I want to know, that's it. You bring up a great point. I would love to see some of the workups that they presented and how quick some of them got thrown out, or how innovative some of them may have been to incorporate all those aspects.
And we talk about the Cardinals and being traditional and all that stuff, which is true, but like the Yankees haven't had a City Connect, and I think I
Yeah.
read that they're not gonna have one. Like they
Really?
are. But I think I may be wrong. But I definitely know that by the end of this season, the Yankees and there's one other team, and I don't remember who it is, will have not had one yet. And for some reason, I thought the Yankees were not going to have one.
I knew that the Cardinals were one of the last.
Yeah. The Dodgers, I think their City Connect was just the same uniform with the Dodgers written in Spanish or something like that. I may be wrong, but that's what we've been talking about in the Discord that we've had. I just pulled up the Giants, and it's a nice. It gets away a little bit from a national one, but I'm thinking, some of these teams that are so identified by their uniform, it may be very difficult for them, and that have been around for 100 and some plus years. It's just very difficult for them to just kind of toss that all out, right? And I think that we're seeing that, like I said, with the Dodgers, with the Yankees, and with the Cardinals. Teams like that just aren't getting too far away. Whereas a team that has a little less history can go out. Now on the side of that was the Cubs and the Wrigleyville ones, but folks, I don't know that there were a whole lot of people like that. I mean, maybe Cubs fans did. I always thought that one was just kind of silly to me, but so I don't know. I guess that we shouldn't be surprised at all that the Cardinals were conservative on it. I would have hated to see them come out and be some really weird color. Like, the Boston one is under, I know they tied it to the Boston Marathon and all that kind of stuff, but when you first see it, it doesn't, it's like, that's a Red Sox uniform. It's blue and yellow. What's up with that? And the Philly one doesn't really get into theirs as well. So I would have hated to see a Cardinals uniform that was like purple or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that was part of my issue too, because I was like, the Philly one just is brutal, and that's the one that sticks out in my mind the most. Because everybody else, I think we're a little more conservative than that, but yeah, I was a fan when it came out. I kind of like the alternative jersey type ideas, and to get the Cardinals to get out of their comfort zone to do this I felt like while others clearly thought this wasn't aggressive enough, I was A-okay with it, with a little bit of background information that this is about as far as they're going to go.
I will say, I know why they went with the hats that they did. The
That
block
I'm not a big
STL.
fan of, but no.
But I mean, I know it's got the history and it ties into like, especially to the Negro leagues of teams that are in St. Louis. And I get all that, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those. There is a cap out there that's got the patch that's on the side of the thing with the fleur de lis and the arch. That it's on the front of the cap and then like STL's on the side or something like that. And that cap is pretty cool. I mean, I may buy that one. I'd buy a jersey, but I'm not made of money. But this podcast doesn't bring in that much. So, but so that would have been interesting too. And again, I get it and it's fine. But just wasn't a big, huge fan of the hats.
Yeah, that would be the thumbs down on the hat to me, thumbs up on the jersey, if that means anything. So
Yeah. And to go back to what you were saying, I'm really glad that they kept with white pants if they're going to do this red jersey, because
agreed.
red on
I
red
am
would have been terrible.
huge. I'm a huge college baseball fan.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing bothers me more than the colored pants. It's either black or gray. I can get away. You can get away with pinstripe with me a little bit, but that's about the tipping point for me.
So anyway, Cardinals getting at it today with those uniforms, with Uncle Charlie on the call. I think to
Yep.
watch Adam Wainwright coming back to St. Louis, and it's very. I guess it's interesting that as far as I know, I may be wrong, I may have missed it, but I think this is his first game to call. I know he's done work in the broadcast, in the studio as an analyst and stuff like that. But I think this is his first game to call. And so it's interesting that it's in St. Louis. I mean, one, it gives him that level of familiarity. Maybe it cuts down on the nerves and stuff, and it's not a completely foreign thing. But on the other side, I mean, it's got to be difficult to kind of, push those feelings aside and, be kind of somewhat objective. I don't think anybody expects him to be completely objective necessarily, but 'cause he's going to be he's going to give you the information from both teams. But I think it's gonna be it's an interesting challenge for him to be here for his first game.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. I couldn't remember if he had done a playoff game before or not.
Well, and that's true. He has done playoff games. This is the first game that he's done as a retired player, I guess.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I didn't.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'd forgotten about that part.
No, yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about the retired aspect of it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to tonight. I mean, just not only is there a little bit of blood in the water, but it just kind of like you went from last night, which could have been the Buck Carey show, to tonight, and then the Sunday night game of the week tomorrow night. I mean, that's Cubs Cardinals Memorial Day weekend for me. You know what I'm saying? And I've been excited about it, though, every aspect of it completely. I am really. I guess I shouldn't be. I'm surprised, but I love the fact that he's out there. You know what I mean? I mean, I know that he's played Springfield at least once, and I know that he's coming back this summer. And you talk about a guy that's enjoying retirement. It's pretty cool to have him as an ambassador.
Yeah. Adam Wainwright's a good dude, and he's having a lot of fun. And it's good. It's always good to see people having fun.
Yes.
I mean, you always enjoy. That's one of some of the players that we see that kind of express themselves. You know that they're having a good time out there. It's a lot more fun to watch than.
Yeah. Well, on the flip, no, I not to be a downer on this. Look at I mean, it feels like they don't really want Molina around much. You know what I'm saying? If that tells you anything. It's kind of funny how it's like, hey, come on, and not you just yet type situation. It's basically I'm saying they're enjoying retirement in two totally different ways.
Well, that's true. That's true. The Molina situation is just a little bit weird, right? I mean, because they make a big deal that they've hired him as an assistant to the general manager or president, Mo's assistant basically, and that was in spring training, and he never made it to spring training. Every time anybody asks about him, they say, "Oh, he'll be here sometime soon" or whatever. But here we are into May, and as far as we know, Yachty hasn't done anything with this job. I mean, granted, you're a legend and an icon, and you can kind of do whatever you want to, but I don't know. I just find it very interesting, like you said, to see Adam Wainwright doing all this stuff. And I'm sure Yachty's doing, he's got his basketball team. He's doing other things, back home, and he's not in the public light like we see. But I'm just surprised that he took that job and then just hasn't necessarily done anything with it. I mean, I don't know what that means. I don't know if he took that job because he wanted to be a manager someday and he thought this was his way, and then they gave Marmol the extension and he decided it maybe wasn't in St. Louis. I don't know, but it just seems a little bit weird that for a guy that got hired for the Cardinals, we haven't seen him at all yet this year.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and the forgotten man. And honestly, I was worried about him being a presence because a month ago, if he was in that dugout, things would have been nasty.
Oh yeah,
so it kind of works out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, there is one of those to where he marches to the beat of his own drum, and sometimes I kind of wonder if that hasn't soured the organization a little bit. As a player, you kind of have to deal with it. Now it's like, hey, you're on our time if we're paying you type situation, and
right.
And you never know. I mean, that gives such a negative connotation, and I don't want it to be like that, but obviously there's something there going on.
I don't know. It feels like it, but you're right. Yachty's a different kind of guy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, anytime he wants to come back to St. Louis, they're going to take him. No
Yeah.
matter who's in charge up
Agreed.
front.
You have to.
They'll find,
that's how it
they'll
works.
find a place for him.
If you remember, people thought the same thing about Ozzy, and now Ozzy's the first one in a red jacket. So, that's what it is.
There's somebody else not here too, so that's part of why Ozzy got back.
True. Yeah. Other time. You know what I mean? Remember, undefeated.
Yep. He and he can deal with TLR once a year, but and then
that's a great point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and then Tony, Tony's not involved with the team as much, and he's here and there, drops in whatever, but Ozzy's definitely taken to this ambassador role of, and with all the others gone, I mean, he is the guy, he is the living face of the franchise. I mean, there's not really any doubt now, right? I mean, out of the retired players and all that, I mean, that's that is it. And thankfully Ozzy's, compared to those guys, pretty young. We should have him for a while, but the legendary aspect of the Cardinals was taking a hit over the last 5
Sure.
years. So Cardinals, like I said, 2 games with the Cubs. You hope at least a split there, especially with Sonny Gray going on Sunday night. You get a little greedy, maybe you could sweep it. Then they go to Cincinnati, play the Reds for the first time, and then they go to Philadelphia, and that may be a real test, right?
That is a tough road trip walking out of there. You go Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Houston, and Philadelphia is really good.
Yeah. The Cardinals played Philadelphia pretty well earlier in the year in St. Louis. They lost 2-3, but that third game was a pretty tight game from what I remember. That kind of turned late. And you should get Sonny Gray in that series, so that helps. But you're probably going to have to face Nolan Wheeler. If you face up Nolan or Wheeler against Gray, that's going to be a heck of a game.
Oh yeah.
I think this is they got to win. They got to win at least one of the next 2 against the Cubs, and they got to go in and win in the series against Cincinnati, which should be pretty doable. And then, as long as you don't get swept by the Phillies, or even if you get swept, but it's competitive, I think you still feel pretty good about this team.
Yeah, no, agreed. They're in a good spot. You want to avoid that spiral. Yeah,
hopefully they will. But we've run a little long as we bring Mr. Medlock back in the groove. Got to get him, get his work in. It's not like Yachty when he's been gone all year. We got Allen back in. Now we got to put him to work. So, but anyway, we will be back again next week and hopefully talking about a good week of Cardinal baseball. But until then, for Allen, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.